Before we welcome Kristen up front, we have some special guests here to tell us more about Shining Star Cleveland and what kind of impact Kristen's winning performance will have on Heights High. So please welcome Susan Hurwitz and Debbie Rothschild.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Susan Hurwitz. I am the board chair of Montefiore Foundation, which sponsors Shining Star Cle. I am also a proud alum of Heights High School, class of January 1963, a long time ago. And Debbie is also an alum, so we could not be more thrilled to be here this evening. And I must say, I am enormously impressed with this turnout. I asked people, is it usually like this at these board meetings? It shows a very involved, very vital community, and it's a very exciting thing. Montefiore, if you don't know, is a senior living facility. And I did a little bit of homework and discovered that Montefiore is about 20 years older than Cleveland Heights High. And Cleveland Heights High dates back to 1901. So these are two organizations that have had a major impact on my life and my family's life. And I feel very devoted to both. Early on, Montefiore was located in Cleveland Heights, just east of Lee Road. The organization was there for 75 years and provided only long-term care at that point. 27 years ago, we moved to Beechwood, and we expanded our services to include dementia care, rehabilitation, hospice, home care, a whole slew of things. And you can find us on montefiorecare.org if you have any need of our services. But of course, things change and some things stay the same. So Montefiore is still providing excellent care for seniors in the community, and Heights High School is still providing an outstanding education to the young people in the community, and they still have a dynamite music program, which they did when I was in school too. So I'd like to introduce my colleague, Debbie Rothschild, who is the executive director of our foundation and would like to say a few words.
Thank you. Thank you, Susan. Thank you so much. First of all, thank you for inviting us in this evening. I am so proud and feel so connected to this community. And to be able to celebrate with Kristen and her family tonight is just, it really fills my heart. There's no question. This is a very special program for us. So I'm going to tell you just a few things about Shining Star. Montefiore being a senior living community for aging adults, and Shining Star Cle, a solo singing competition for high school students. So some of you are wrinkling your brows, as did we when we first came up with the idea. So what's the connection? The connection is there is nothing short of bringing grandchildren into the building, I have to say, other than music that brings more joy and more smiles and more contentment and more sort of recall in memory than music in our building. So we created this event for a number of different reasons. One, we wanted to create a strong fundraising event for our foundation to continue to help us sort of push forward our mission of treating people with the best in quality care, especially in the memory care arena. Number two, we wanted to connect with kids and connect with people that could bring that joy into the building. And three, we wanted to see it, we saw it as an outreach kind of an event. So even being in this room tonight is a beautiful way for us to be able to share with you who we are and the kind of care that we provide on a daily basis. So we created this solo singing competition. The competition reaches 8 counties. So we reach out to literally 250 schools across the 8-county area. We do online auditions, face-to-face auditions, a semifinals, and then we chose 10 students and 2 alternates to perform, to compete on the stage of the Ohio Theater. So that was September 22nd. If we could pull up that little clip, can we do that? I will ask you to do, if you would, take a look at shiningstarcle.org, and you'll see some video clips of the event. So what I want to say is that we are so pleased and thrilled to come to Cleveland Heights, especially as both of us being Cleveland Heights alumni, and not only acknowledge Kristen's talent and ask you all to once again give her a round of applause for being our top performer. We don't have a check for Kristen today because what we've chosen to do is we will give that college scholarship money directly to the school. Therefore, no tax implications and those kinds of things. So as soon as Kristen decides where she's going to college, we'll be thrilled to send that money directly to the college. Along with that gift, the top prize winner, we're giving a gift of $2,500 to the Cleveland Heights Music Department. Oh my God. So with that. If I could just take one more minute and ask Kristen to just stand up so that we can.
Some tokens of our appreciation for you, Edgar. So please come take a picture.
See the auditorium. It is the shining jewel. Yes. It's you'll be so happy when you see it.
Thank you so much. So I would really love to see
Come home and see it again.
I would love to.
Do it.
Thank you.
All right. Next, I'd like to recognize a very special group of district educators. The Noble Preschool Program continues to go above and beyond what is required of them and has once again been awarded a 5-star rating by the Ohio Department of Education Step Up to Quality Division. We are so very proud of the work of the Noble Preschool team and the entire Noble community. It is an engaged, excited, loving, warm place to be. And under the leadership of Patrick Carpenter, it's going upward and upward and upward. If you ever need a shot of energy, go to Noble. When I call your name, please come up front to receive a certificate and remain standing for a group photo. Tracy Tyrell. Susan Faraz-Zah. Principal Patrick Carpenter. And our excellent, dedicated, knowledgeable, hardworking lead of our preschool program, Danielle Foran. Thank you for all you do. Again, let's give them a round of applause. Thank you. All right. And now it is time for our October Tiger Team Members of the Month. We will conclude tonight's recognitions by taking the opportunity to recognize our members for October. These Cleveland Heights University Heights staff members have been recognized by their peers and community for going above and beyond to create a culture of excellence in our district. You are truly appreciated. We have several other chosen honorees with us tonight, so when I read your name, please come forward to receive your certificate and take a group photo. From the Board of Education, Ricky Newman. From Boulevard, Miranda Faust. From Canterbury, Emily Drow. From the Delisle Option Center, Chris Cook. From Fairfax Elementary, Dana Bogus. From Garrity, Rebecca Baum. From Heights High, Karen DeLillo. From Monticello, Martha Bayless. From Noble, Mary Wyndham. From Oxford, Marie Jefferson. From Roxborough Elementary, Kristen Figas. And from Rocks Middle, Tiffany Jordan Shaw. Right. Photo. Next, I'd like to invite Caroline Imka from the Superintendent's Cadre to provide an update on current events at Heights High School. You may also recognize her from the musical as well. Yeah. One of the fabulous stars.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Caroline. I'm a senior at Cleveland Heights High School, and I have some news for you guys today. Go Tigers! Our varsity football team has made it to playoffs. So round of applause for our Tigers. The first game will be against Menor at Menor High School at 7 o'clock this Friday. So if you guys are willing to make the drive, sure to come out and support the Tigers. We're bringing the marching band and everything, so it's a big deal. AP Bio and AP Environmental Science students are going to Belize again this summer. Not this summer, this spring. We did last year as well. It's a great opportunity for the kids to get some real world experience, and we're holding a fundraiser to raise some money for the kids to help with flights and with overall expenses, and that will be on November 16th at 6 p.m. at the B-side. You can get tickets on Facebook and at the door for $25, and we'll have a whole bunch of raffle prizes and stuff, so be sure to come out and support the kids and help them get there. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Caroline. And now we will move on to our statements from the audience. And the first person that has signed up is Adora Schmiedel she's a Monticello parent, and her topic is equity in our schools.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Superintendent Kirby, council members, fellow Heights parents, and members of our amazing and awesome, as we just saw, Heights community. As Jody said, my name is Adora Enzaliba Schmiedel, and I am a recent returnee to the school district. My two boys went to preschool in the Heights and then on to charter schools for elementary school. My oldest now attends high school outside of the district in a parochial school, and my youngest advocated quite strongly to join Heights Middle School 2 years ago. He felt the opportunities around the music program, specifically orchestra, were compelling. He was so excited at the opportunity to be part of a blended middle school for 2 years. Like most of our children, he has friends in both schools. Now, after 2 years as a member of a joint middle school, we are in separate schools again. While we now enjoy the proximity of the school and our walking clubs, we have been unpleasantly surprised and concerned by the perceived and apparent inequities between the two schools. I refer to the two middle schools. And we are puzzled about the complacency that we all seem to have. My own son, he is 13. He's told me that race, geography, and wealth dictate the resources that Monticello receives. And I'm sure as a parent, none of you want to have that conversation with your child. I do not want to believe this. The parent-teacher meetings I attended last month reinforced the quality and commitment of the staff and administration of Monticello Middle School. But my son's concerns have been reinforced by other parents and by the facts I am faced with. An advanced math class that is too large to serve the students effectively. A music program that is half as challenging and in no way as fun as last year, my son's words. Both of these situations, which are first-hand experiences for our family, are the result of having a shared teacher with the high school. This is not the case at our sister middle school, and the children know this. They talk. This summer, several Heights parents from both schools, and shout out to the Rocks and Monticello parents who are here today, we are wearing equity pins, and if you'd like one, we'd love to share. Several parents from both schools, including myself, reached out to the administration and the board to alert them that it looked like there would not be 2 full-time teachers, music teachers at Monticello. We were told, and I quote, "The current plan is to have 2 full-time teachers at both our middle schools. This supports the number of students in our music programs, which is essentially equal in the 2 buildings. We'll keep an eye on this over the summer. As you might know, teacher assignments are being negotiated now, and we're hiring to replace Jeff Altonen. So we don't know the exact outcome to this yet, but the intent and the goal is to have an equal number of FTEs in the 2 buildings. This is important to us, and I'm glad you shared with us your concern." When school started, my son informed us that this was not the case. And as music parents, members of FOM, we are advocating for this to be changed. I've also been in touch now with several parents who were part of the middle school before the Wiley joint location. And they continue to say that this has been an ongoing discussion, and they see no hope of it ever being resolved. I stand here with my fellow parents to ask you to change the dialogue. As Heights citizens, let us ensure that no child, no neighbor, no school feel less than. I call for an equity audit and answers to the myriad of concerns that parents have had over the year about perceived unequal allocation of resources. If this perception is wrong, then greater transparency is an asset to us all. If it is right, then we must fix it. We will continue as parents to be here at board meetings, politely demanding answers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'll just say, thank you so much for your comments. We are engaged in an equity audit, and we will be sharing the results. We're going to look at everything in addition to the things that you've mentioned in your remarks. We'll share that with the board and make that available publicly as well. And then I know we have a follow-up meeting, scheduled, so we can talk more about that. But thank you. Thank you for your advocacy and raising this up, continuing to raise this up to us. We're committed to equity between the schools, with the understanding that the definition of equity is going to be really important. We have to look at the needs of the schools, and this is across the board, just not between the 2 schools as well. But it is certainly on our radar. We've been looking at that. One thing that we're asking the board to vote on tonight as a short-term remedy for the advanced math class are additional tutors for Monticello to provide some support in the math classes to help deal with a larger class size. But that's a short-term remedy. Long-term, we want to make sure we have structures in place so that we have manageable class sizes at both campuses.
And the next person on our list is Ann Tisch, and her topic is equity in middle school. So.
Goodness, I don't think I could do it nearly as eloquently. Good evening. I am Ann Tisch. My son is an 8th grader also at Monticello, and I'm also very troubled and concerned with what has happened with the geometry class. And my experience is that he was very excited to attend Monticello. He was very excited during the summer to get back to school and to see his friends. He was very, very excited. And the first week was great, but now the schools have separated. The changes between what he had when everyone was together and what he has now is glaring. And it's really heartbreaking. So he was excited to go back to school. But he was very upset about the geometry class. That very first week, I actually spoke to one of the board members and told them about my concerns with the geometry class. And they said they would look into it. And they have looked into it. I've been told by my son that there have been multiple times when people have come to observe the class and the students are in better behavior, but nothing has changed. We are now 25% into the school year, halfway through the first semester, of a course that is going to be on his high school transcript. This is not a class, this is a class that, as he's applying to colleges, will be looked at. And yet, the concern has just, we've spoken to the principal twice about this, once on curriculum night, and again during the parent-teacher conferences, and both times we were told that the decision was above him, and they were looking into it. That's nice that you're looking into it, but in the meantime, my child is not getting the services that the other school is getting. I actually asked him at one point, he's also very involved in the music program, and he's very disheartened about the quality of the orchestra now versus what they had before when everyone was together. And I asked him, I said, would you like me to investigate going to Roxborough? I think we have a very reasonable request if you feel strong. No, he wants to stay at Monticello. He loves Monticello. He wants to be there. Unfortunately, I don't feel that Monticello feels the same way. I appreciate that you're looking into this, but we knew these kids were coming through. There was a geometry class last year. There's a geometry class this year. There will be a geometry class, I'm sure, next year and all the following years. But yet there's no teacher at the school that is certified to teach, and that's why we have to borrow a teacher from the high school? I'm just kind of shocked that there's no middle school teacher that's certified at that building. Anyways, I'm here with some other parents because we wanted to make sure that our voices were heard and that we do care about our children's education. And we hope that you do too. Thank you.
Thank you. Was there anyone who didn't get to sign up who wanted to speak? Do you have any more comments to make? Anything else you want to add before I move on the agenda?
No, yeah, I think, as I said from the previous comment, we're looking at all of the different equity issues and looking at short-term remedies for this year, but longer-term remedies so that we don't have classes. What happened specifically at Monticello was the number of students in the geometry class versus the number of students at Roxborough. And so I'll be working with the principal to make sure moving forward that we have enough students to carry 2 classes so that we don't have to have a class of 27 or 28 students, something like that, so that we can have smaller class sizes. Roxborough has a higher number of students that are in the geometry class, over 30, which is why they have 2 classes and there's 1 class at Monticello.
We were told by the teacher that there's 33 students in that class.
It's not 33 students. Not at Monticello, it's not 33 students. I don't have the exact number, but I'll share that back with you.
Can you just copy all of us on that when you do that?
Thank you.
I want to thank everyone for coming and sharing your thoughts. I greatly appreciate it. You're welcome to stay for the meeting, but you don't have to because I do know that these meetings can get rather long. But feel free to leave at any time. Just be careful of the cord over there if you happen to walk past there. So next item on our agenda is the consent agenda, and for those of you who don't come to the meetings regularly, just so you know, we group a bunch of things together and vote on them once at a time, and members can pull certain things out if we want to discuss those separately, but at least doing the vote this way allows us to get through the business portion of the meeting sooner. And Ms. Kirby, I'm assuming that the tutors are part of the
They are.
supplemental assignments that
Yeah.
are on here? Okay,
Yeah.
great.
And we have 29 students in the class at Monticello.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, do I have a motion to consider the consent agenda?
Motion that we consider the consent agenda.
Second.
Second, thank you. Any discussion on the consent agenda?
Couple little things. If I may. I noticed that we are losing a number of lunch aides, and this is something that I've noticed for the past few months. And I just wonder if there's perhaps something behind this that we need to look into. Some of these people are well known to us. One of the resignations this month is someone who received a Tiger Team recognition within the past couple of months. So I just wonder if perhaps we shouldn't ask somebody to look into why we're losing our lunch people. We've lost, I think, 7 or 8 over the past few months, and I'm wondering if it might be a salary issue as the fight for 15 gets real. I know these are not terribly high-paying positions, but are we just, within the right pay scale for folks doing that sort of work? I would just hate to see us, it's noticeable when you lose that number. So just something that kind of came to my mind. And then the other thing that I wanted to mention is, wow, the Robotics Club had a very successful fundraiser. And once again, members of our community were incredibly generous toward this very worthwhile club. And I just wanted to say thank you to all of those who donated, and thank you to Kathy at the B Spot for hosting the event. As always, very generous community member and a great spot. And a Heights grad. And truly at the forefront of, for women in that field. She is a real trailblazer. So she's a great role model.
I just wanted to acknowledge that we have some great field trips coming up that are on this that we are approving. And also, I would like to thank the very generous members of our community for the donations that we are going to vote to accept tonight. Any other comment? Then, Mr. Gaynor, will you call the roll?
Mr. Posh?
Yes.
Mr. Hines?
Yes.
Ms. Serini?
Yes.
Ms. Lewis?
Yes.
Ms. Wright?
Yes.
All right, so that gets us through items under the consent agenda. So that brings us to the finance, which would be the treasurer's report.
It does.
So Scott, take it away.
All right, the first item that we have there for you is action and kind of a lead into some of the other conversations. So we have the 5-year forecast for your approval. The one thing that I want to mention, the only difference this forecast to the one that you approved in October is that the student health success and wellness funds that we had previously had both in revenue and expense have been pulled out, and they're required to be kept in a separate fund. So you actually approved that under consent agenda. Item number 3, the new fund and appropriation, Fund 467. So the states decided that they want us to both keep that revenue separate from the 5-year forecast in the general fund and to track the expenses that we charge against it. So other than that, the forecast is the same as that in October, and I know that'll be kind of the lead-in for the Lay Finance Committee in their conversation to talk about some of the things we've already been talking about in terms of what that means and what the bottom line looks like and our need for additional operating money.
Those changes came as a result of the biennial budget, right?
Correct.
Yes.
Yes.
Pull out of those student wellness funds.
Yes, so the student wellness funds were new because of the biennial budget. The additional Ed Choice vouchers at the high school were new because of the biennial budget. And also every district in Ohio's state funding was frozen.
For the
because of
next 2 years.
For the next 2 years for the biennial budget.
So do I have a motion to consider the five-year forecast?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Gaynor, or do we have any discussion on the five-year forecast?
I think the major part of the discussion is going
It's
to be
about
when
to
the Lay
happen.
Finance Committee, I mean,
That's what I
I
think.
think these numbers are the way they are, but I'm holding my comments to the Lay Finance.
Okay, so Mr. Gaynor, will you call the roll?
Ms. Wright?
Yes.
Mr. Posh?
Yes.
Mr. Hines?
Yes.
Ms. Serini?
Yes.
Ms. Lewis?
Yes.
All right, so now
Thank you.
we are moving on to the Lay Finance Committee presentation. So Ryan, thank you for being here tonight.
You're welcome. I'm told I have to log in again, so if you could bear with me for a moment. Well, thank you for having me tonight. My name's Ryan Ruth. I'm a citizen of Cleveland Heights. I am a parent of a recent Heights grad and the parent of a current Heights junior. I'm one of the members of the Lay Finance Committee. The committee has a long history in this district. The current version of the committee was constituted in December of 2018. I believe there's 4 of us here today. Myself, Adam Dew, Quatrice James, and Catherine Petrie are here. I believe Max Gerbach and James Goff had prior commitments. James Posh is our ex officio member. Our meetings are held roughly quarterly. Okay, and they are open to the public. What are we and what are we not? We are a diverse group of individuals representing a variety of interests. We have expertise, and we're chosen because of our expertise in finance, legal, and education issues. We care about the schools. I mean, that's why we applied to be on the committee. That's why we were selected. And we are an independent entity. We're not beholden to the district. We had many vigorous discussions, not vigorous, but we had many discussions with Mr. Gaynor over certain of the line items on the 5-year forecast. We had a lot of questions. In some instances, he had ready answers. In others, he went back and got back to us in future meetings. But we did have the opportunity to ask real questions of Mr. Gaynor. That said, we're not auditors or independent investigators. We did not walk around and look in school buildings. We're focused primarily on finances, and thus we looked primarily at the financial statements and financial information that the district provides. We're not an entity that focuses primarily on political considerations when we make our recommendations. We're making our recommendations based on where we think the numbers lead us and not necessarily where we think the politics would lead us. Our mission, the Lay Finance Committee's mission was defined by the board. I won't go through all of these bullet points. The 4th one, though, is that we will review the district's 5-year forecast for reasonableness and make recommendations to the board on the necessity and timing of operating levies. So we are here to make a recommendation on an operating levy. What was our process? Our first meeting was in February of this year. We've had at least 4 public meetings between then and now. We've taken a good hard look at the CAFR, which Mr. Gaynor's office prepares. We've taken a good look at the 5-year forecast. As a result of our process, I'm happy to say that the recommendations that we're making today we are making on a unanimous basis. Before getting to our specific recommendations, I don't want to belabor the point, but for those people that aren't familiar with Ohio law, and I met somebody who's lived in Cleveland Heights his whole life, or at least his whole adult life, and had no idea about House Bill 920. So I do think that some brief review of why we in this district and other districts in Ohio have to come back with operating levies is appropriate. Ohio House Bill 920 provides that except for new construction, the dollar amount collected by a school district cannot increase without the passage of a levy. Once the levy passes, except for new construction, the dollar amount that can be collected is frozen. So we expect to collect roughly $73 million in property taxes this year. That's the amount we would collect next year. Doesn't matter what happens to housing values, $73 million into the foreseeable future because of Ohio House Bill 920. I will make my presentation relatively short, but I will point you to the CHUH website. Jane Geneva, who was a prior member of this committee and I believe had given the presentation of a style that I'm giving tonight, prepared a lot of information, and that can be found on the website for those of you looking for details. So what happened last year? Cuyahoga County, as the homeowners in the audience know, reappraised our properties, and we got a notice of our new property values. Countywide, they went up an average of 11%. But because of House Bill 920, that increase in housing value doesn't change the overall amount that can be collected by the district. Here in Cleveland Heights, University Heights, we're in the light green. On average, but you can see that almost everywhere in the county, the values went up. On average, in Cleveland Heights, University Heights, homes were reappraised at around 8% higher than their prior appraised value. There's a lot of ways you can look at this. If you think of, if you got an 8% raise at work, but you paid the same amount in taxes, you might consider that a tax cut. I understand that the analogy isn't completely the same for property, but if your house value goes up and you're paying the same in property taxes, at least to one line of thinking, you've gotten a tax cut. This is because the average home value went up, but the aggregate dollar amount of taxes that is raised remains flat district-wide. So because of House Bill 920, school districts have to go back on the ballot every few years. Why? To keep up with inflation. That's what this is really about. We don't get automatic increases. We have to come back to keep up with inflation. And that's what we see. Here's data on operating levies statewide for a 10 or 11-year period. You can see that, the first thing that jumps out a little bit is we had a lot more about 10 years ago. But I think if you look at the rate at which they were passing, that explains why. There were more on the ballot, but during the Great Recession, many of them were failing. Now that many more are passing, you're not seeing quite as many, but there's still quite a bit. If you consider that there's only a little over 600 school districts in the state of Ohio, that's an awful lot of levies for 600 school districts every year. If you assume about 150 districts are going to have an operating levy on the ballot in any given year, and you've got 600 districts, 600 divided by 150 is 4. So that means the average district is on the ballot about every 4 years. Are we average here? Well, of course, we're above average, but in many ways. This is maybe one area we don't want to be above average in. If you look at our averages, we have a 4-year cycle from 2000 to when the levy passage in 2000 to 2004, a 3-year cycle, a 4-year cycle, and then a 5-year cycle, the last round from 2011 to 2016. 2016 plus 4 is 2020, and that's why I'm standing at the podium here today. But this points out, statewide, we're about in the same position that many districts are statewide in looking for funding every 4 years. Sometimes we're able, we size levies for 3 years and we stretch them to 4. Sometimes we size them for 4, stretch them to 5. But we're normally back on the ballot roughly every 4 years. And this is what you see with other of our peer districts. If you look around, Shaker, Solon, Mayfield, Chagrin Falls, they're doing the same thing we're doing. We're not different or special or unique. But what do we take away from this? Being on the ballot in Ohio with an operating levy every few years is not a sign of mismanagement. It's a sign of a district trying to keep up with inflation. Plain and simple. There are some districts that avoid this. They have income taxes. About a third of the school districts in Ohio have an income tax. A lot of these are rural districts, but this is how they can have their finances rise in times of prosperity. But with Ohio House Bill 920, that's not an option when you are reliant on the property tax. So these slides explain why districts like ours are on the ballot every few years with operating levies. So let's get to today's recommendations. First, the unanimous recommendation of the Lay Finance Committee is that it is appropriate for the school board to put an operating levy on the ballot in the first half of 2020. We'll talk in a moment about the reason for the timing. Second, It's the unanimous recommendation of the Lay Finance Committee that the amount of the operating levy be set between 7.9 mils and 9.5 mils. And again, we'll get into the details behind this in a moment. A lot of what we do, and a lot of what we did with Mr. Gaynor, was look at the 5-year forecast. I guess this isn't the most visible document for some in the audience. Can we zoom?
You can zoom in the bottom right-hand corner.
Ryan, while you're zooming in, just so everybody's aware, this document is on board docs. It is available after this meeting on board docs for the date of this meeting, November, what's the date?
5th.
The 5th? Yeah. So if you look at the agenda for the November 5th, you can get this presentation, and you can also get the 5-year forecast and the assumptions that go behind this, and the historical 5-year forecast going back to, I think, 2014. Is that right? So,
All right, so the first question is, why are we making a recommendation to put a levy on the ballot? And I think the key factor here is, so this is the fiscal year that we're in, fiscal year 2020. If you go down to our ending cash, this is the number that's concerning. We're at $1.8 million at the end of fiscal year 2021. You know, that amount is roughly 1% of the budget of the district, a little more, but between 1 and 2%. And so, you know, that is the biggest concern, is that if we don't change something, we're going to be on the path to running out of cash. And you can see the balances go quite a bit more negative in years past that. If we don't pass a levy now, the committee, we would expect that the district and the board and administration would have to start considering cuts going into next year's school year, because you wouldn't necessarily want to just stay the course and end the 2020-2021 school year with such a low cash balance. So this is the main reason for our timing recommendation. You know, it would be best to know going into next summer whether, you know, you're going to be facing this scenario or whether the voters have passed a levy, and you can plan accordingly. What else do you see in the 5-year forecast? If you go up to state funding, and this isn't summed, but if you're looking at the receipts from state sources, you know, state funding is roughly flat. If you sum these 4 columns together, you're seeing 32, 33 million almost every year. So not only are we not getting inflationary increases from our own property taxes, we're not getting inflationary increases from the state either. State funding is flat. With the current political climate, there's no reason to believe that there's going to be any significant changes in what we see in state funding either. What else do we see? Another major impact in our district's finances are vouchers. No surprise to people that have been at these meetings in the past. You know, if you look at this line item, fiscal 2017, you see 7.5 million. This is the total voucher amount. 8.5 million, 9.9. This fiscal year, 12.4, and heading upwards. So, you know, if you consider that the state funding is flat, but we have to send more of the money that's coming in from the state out the door, really this is in essence a cut by the state when it comes to the amount of aid that they're giving to us that we actually get to keep to educate our students. So there's a real need. Our local property taxes are frozen. Our state funding is frozen or really being cut, and inflation's real. We'll get to that slide later on, but inflation in salary and wages, particularly in wages in this environment, is a real phenomenon, and we have no way to keep up without an additional levy. So that really raised the question of how long the board might want to plan for. You know, there's quite a bit of uncertainty in local, state, federal politics. We'll learn later on tonight whether we're going to have a mayor in Cleveland Heights or not in our future. But with all that uncertainty, we sought to recommend an amount that was maybe a little more short-term focused. We weren't trying to project out 5, 6, 7 years. We looked at a number that would shore up district financing for this fiscal year and the 3 following. And the number that we arrived on with the assistance of Mr. Gaynor and his financial models was 7.9 mils. And so what's the intent there? The intent is to look at the fiscal year '23, where right now we would show a balance of negative 22 million, and making sure that the millage is enough to make that a positive number.
I think it needs to be noted on that five-year forecast that those are cumulative numbers. So we're not losing 21 million in one particular school year. It's a compounded loss over a period of 3
Yes.
years.
That's an ending cash balance.
Right.
Yes, thank you. So we recommended a range on the prior slide. 7.9 was the minimum we are recommending. That said, if the board has, and administration has ideas for areas that they could cut, it's possible that you might come to a millage that's less than that. You know more than we do about some of the workings. As I indicated at the start, there's limits to the role of our committee. We don't think it's our job or within our scope to kind of look for things to cut and make cut recommendations to you. That's within your purview. But if you could find cuts, there could be a reason to go under 7.9 mils. We do think there's some risk factors, which is why 7.9 isn't the only number we're giving you tonight. The first risk factor is the assumption of future cuts. The 5-year forecast that you have approved assumes that the district is going to find a new 750,000 in cuts every year, next year, and then the year after that, you have to still implement those cuts and find a new 750,000. Eventually, this is going to become difficult, if it hasn't already. So we think that's a risk factor. If you can't find all of those cuts to make, then the 7.9 mils may not be enough. Another concern is, when I pointed out the number about the cash balance at the end of fiscal year 2023, we indicated that we were trying to solve so that number would be positive, but it is a relatively small positive number. The district, even at 7.9 mils, would be operating at a financial loss for the 3-year period if the 5-year forecast comes to fruition. That would take our cash balance down to a low number, lower than what a target would be for most districts and lower than what we would want for credit rating maintenance purposes. The third risk factor is salary and benefit assumptions. There is an error on this slide. The district assumption is that salary and wages for staff will increase at 1.5% per year. I believe the benefits assumption is slightly higher than the 1.5%. So that is an error. That should read salary and wages. But the most recent teacher's contract included a 2% raise, not a 1.5% raise. And we know the teachers union has publicly stated its belief that they should get raises of at least the 2.0%. So again, another risk factor. If teachers are given a raise above the 1.5%, then it's possible the 7.9 mils would not be enough. So we spent a lot of time looking at different scenarios. If you assume that one of these factors turns against us, you have to then project out how much it turns against you, and there was a lot of back and forth. Ultimately, we concluded that 7.9 to 9.5 was an appropriate range for our recommendation. Again, the people in this room, particularly the people up on the dais, know a lot about the impact of vouchers on this district. I'm not trying to be comprehensive here, but I think it makes sense to just point out a few things about the significant financial impact of vouchers on CHUH finances. In many districts, vouchers essentially just flow through a district. And a lot of people that take a voucher assume that's what's happening. The state is sending some money to a district, the district turns around and sends it out to the private school. The district's just a conduit. And that is true some places. That is not true here. In Cleveland Heights, every voucher is a net financial loss to the district because we do not get the full state aid from the pupil, per pupil, that we have to send out through the voucher. For the high school Ed Choice vouchers were $6,000 last year, yet Cleveland Heights was only receiving around $2,100 or $2,200 from the state for each of these students. So essentially for each voucher student, we were losing around $3,800. Now it's true the voucher amount is less for K through 8, but still we lose money on the K through 8 voucher students as well. This year, because of the change in the law, the situation has gotten worse for us here in Cleveland Heights. Students who had previously attended private and religious schools became eligible for vouchers under certain circumstances. The high school, students that would otherwise be going to Cleveland Heights High School became eligible for vouchers for the first time. Because of the impact of the laws passed in the summer of 2019, the increased costs to the district were $2.1 million per year. And because state funding was frozen, there was no funding to offset these costs. Back to the levy amounts, 7.9 mils, what would it raise if that is what the board decides to approve? For each 1 mil in taxes, Cleveland Heights, this district collects roughly 1.1 million in additional funds. So at 7.9 mils, that would be an additional 8.8 million in funds per year through property tax collections. Receipts would rise from around 73 million to 81.8. What would it cost? That's what the homeowners always want to know. Per $100,000 of assessed value, a 7.9 mil levy would cost around $277, an extra $277 per year. So here in the chart, we have some different housing values, and you can see the increase. This is for Cleveland Heights, and there can be very minor variations in this based on neighborhoods and reassessments. But this is the current projection regarding the increase. Going back to how I talked about how at the start, if housing values go up but your taxes stay the same, that's arguably a tax cut. Before the reassessment, the average Cleveland Heights homeowner was paying around 4.13% of the value of their property in property taxes each year. With the reassessment, that dropped because housing values went up, but the amount of taxes collected stayed flat. At 7.9 mils, we get almost back to where we were before the reassessment. So looking at it, and one way of looking at it is that we're putting the homeowners back to where they were on a percentage basis prior to last year's reassessment. And again, this is all about inflation at the end of the day. This is not a levy that's intended to increase the real dollars brought in by the district. It's increasing nominal dollars and trying to keep real dollars constant. Federal Reserve has said that 2% is their target inflation rate. If you think about a levy that's increasing taxes by around 7% and it's supposed to last 3 or 4 years, that's roughly 2% per year. So this really is a levy that's intended to keep up with inflation. If the levy cycle lasts 3 years, then it's slightly more than inflation. If the levy cycle lasts 4 years, then the increased taxes would be slightly less than inflation to the average homeowner. So thank you for your patience with me. Again, just to reiterate our recommendations, it's our unanimous recommendations that the school board put an operating levy on the ballot in the first half of next year, and that the amount be set between 7.9 and 9.5 mils. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan.
Ryan, thank you all.
I'd like to thank the Lay Finance Committee. There's a lot of work that goes into this committee and for the recommendations. And while, you stand up here and you give us a nice succinct PowerPoint, I know there was a lot of work that went behind that. So thank you very much for the time and for everyone on the committee for serving, and Ryan for delivering the report tonight. So we need to discuss whether or not we want to vote to put language on the ballot for another levy. So do I have a motion to consider it?
I motion that we consider language for putting a levy on the ballot in the first half of 2020.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I'm sure we have lots of discussion.
Well, can I start?
Please.
I want to go back and just talk a little bit about one of the voucher slides that Ryan presented to us. Do you mind going back to where you actually show the amount of monies that gets separated from the high school piece? I mean, I just think it's, So-
This one or the next one?
This one, so it basically saying that there's a state component to what the voucher is, as well as a local component, whereas at the very, very bottom, the 3,833 is what the voucher, is a part of that voucher, but it's coming out of our property taxes, it's coming out about it's our revenues, which really come from property taxes, whereas the 2,167 is from the state aid. It needs to be said, we are now in a cap district. So while existing vouchers that we have are underneath this rule, new monies don't work that way. So if you are a new high schooler taking a voucher, the full $6,000 is coming out of our budget, as opposed to any state aid, because we are on a cap now, just not Cleveland Heights, but every single school district in Ohio. We know that the state has been trying to figure out solutions to their state funding problem, which is essentially trying to get wrapped up in this Patterson legislation. Essentially, only 18% of the school districts in Ohio up until this year were on the formula. 85% were off the formula because the formula just didn't work for those districts, and there were special exceptions. So what they've done now is everybody's off the formula, and you're all getting a fixed amount, no matter how many kids are walking in the door. So I know we spend time, recruiting is not the right word, but we get our message out about why we're a valuable educational option for our students. More kids have been coming into our buildings of late, and in that regard, we don't get a penny more from the state. Obviously, we don't get any more property taxes either. But I just think that needs to be said, where, this is killing us. It's not really the reason why we need to put a levy on the ballot. I mean, that really goes, it's all contributing factors. But when you look at the 5-year forecast, when you look at the total picture, this is fighting inflation. You may look at this as like, well, you don't have to give your teachers raises. Well, how can you not? I mean, they are a union, they can strike, we negotiate hard on both sides, we try to come up with an equitable solution. The 2% raise that was listed in here, there was some concessions that were reached regarding health care and benefits that gave us the ability to afford that 2% raise. So there's a cut in actually benefits. So when you're sort of looking at apples and apples, I don't want people looking at this presentation, which is, it's a phenomenal presentation. I just don't want them to think, oh, well, you gave your teachers a 2% raise. Well, it's an effective 2% raise, but there's also savings on that balance sheet that gave us the ability to deliver that. So there's a lot of thought and a lot of work that's kind of gone through on some of these other numbers. So again, you got to look at the whole picture.
Well, the other thing is, if you look at the assumptions in the 5-year forecast and you look at what we've been cutting out, as Ryan mentioned, the $750,000 a year, year over year, we've cut about $5 million out of the budget
Since the last levy.
since the last levy. So it's, when people say districts need to learn to live within their means, we've been doing that. But when you're cutting and inflation continues to rise,
Right.
you get to a point where you have to go ask for voters for more money. And the other issue is, we just heard several families here tonight, and everybody wearing the buttons, about equity. I'm very hesitant to even implement more cuts when, we already have some situations that we know we're investigating, we need to look into, and
Right.
more cuts are not going to help that situation.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more. The solution to equity isn't to remove the teachers at one school, that there is an equivalent for at another school. What we want to do is we want to bring more teachers in and smaller class sizes to all of our schools. I just think about, what did we see tonight? We saw the excellence of our school district. We saw our Tiger Team members, come up here and be celebrated as they should be. We saw a fantastically talented young lady who is just the best of the best. And we are blessed to have her among us. And we saw Caroline Imka come up. I don't know if there is a more involved kid who is getting more out of this school district than she is and giving so much to this school district. It is tragic, really, the funding formula that we are operating under. And it's also important to point out that Ohio is very, very unique in this way that we fund schools. I mean, we all in this room understand that it was declared unconstitutional 3 times 20 years ago, more than 20 years ago at this point, and yet we've never had a Chief Justice of the Ohio Supreme Court with the guts to hold the legislature in contempt of court, which I would love to see that, but never will. A couple of things that just, I think have to be said. Public schools in Ohio cannot operate in the red. We cannot submit a 5-year forecast to the state auditor, which we do twice a year, although it's a 5-year forecast. It cannot go in showing a negative balance without the treasurer submitting a way of a resolution. So that's just not an option. This is a really, really rough moment for the schools. I don't want us to be in a circumstance where we're sitting in May talking about cutting the programs that are the very definition of who we are and what we offer our students. This is something that we all take very personally. So I look forward to hearing my colleagues' remarks.
Well, I am really, really frustrated when you sort of remind us that we have to give essentially a 5-year balanced budget. Well, not necessarily balanced, but showing, 3 years of positive cash flows twice a year on a regular basis, and we do that monthly because we think that's probably the most important, best practice to run our enterprise. But then overnight, the state can yank $2 million out of our budget with just a couple wordings, which they knew were going to impact every single public school district. Overnight, they can do this to us. So, yeah, I know, Ryan, you're highlighting things.
And there are people in the community also, I think it's important, there are really good people who care a lot about this issue, and they will insist that vouchers don't come out of our funding.
But they do.
And they are wrong. They are absolutely 100% misinformed, usually by intention, by other people whose income is determined to some degree or other by that misinformation. It is factually inaccurate to say that the Cleveland Heights Public Schools are not affected by vouchers. It's just absolutely wrong. And the state auditor gives Mr. Gaynor's department the highest award they have just about every year. Well,
I think that we can all come to a consensus that the need is real.
Yes.
There's no
And
question.
I think we need to start discussing amounts. I mean, we were just given a range.
Yeah.
And the discussion is, do we want to go low range, middle range, or the upper end of that range? Assuming that we want, I'm confident that the range they gave us was a valid, real need.
I'm concerned about our plan to cut an additional $750,000 each year. I mean, we've been able to do it successfully recently, but I worry that it's going to have an impact on things that we care about as we go forward in the next year, 2 years, 3 years. I mean,
Without question, will have an impact on the things that we care about.
yeah. How do you avoid affecting instruction in the classroom? At a certain point, we've lost the fat, whatever that fat was.
Well, and a lot of the last
You know,
cuts
and
were out of
what we
IT.
have that is valuable, more valuable than anything else in the district, is the quality of our education. Nothing else matters at the end, you know? Which is, you know, which makes me take the Finance Committee's point about, you know, the risk of that assumption in our forecasts being probably the worst risk we have to face.
Well, I think it's, okay, so we didn't cook up the 750,000 a year.
No.
I mean, that was presented to us by staff as their goal. And I think we have to go with that. I mean, I don't want to second guess staff. I mean, I would have loved to be able to, and this is, I will tell you, I called Jody the minute after this, we had this lay finance committee meeting, just to give her a heads up as a courtesy of what went on. And one of the things was noodling in my head is, well, you know, we're the board, you know, we can just dictate, well, let's cut another million, so we can take the 7.9 and drop it down to 6.9. And because you sort of have to look at all angles to these kinds of things. Well, it quickly became apparent in that conversation that it's like, you just can't do that. I mean, this is, all of a sudden, we're telling staff to make cuts that are going to take us out of our comfort zone. And, I mean, there's going to be times where if the community tells us that we're not going to pass this, you failed, then I think at that point, we need to look at options. And I know other districts have, you know, threatened and played games of, okay, well, if you don't pass the levy, we're going to do pay to play, or we're going to, you know, kill all the AP programs, or we're going to raise class sizes to 35 kids as opposed to 20. I mean, I think we need to go status quo. Scott has shown us year after year after year at how valid these 5-year forecasts are. And they're just not blessed by the Lay Finance Committee, but they're also blessed by the state and our auditors. There are some rogue issues. We don't know what's going to happen with our negotiation cycle. We don't know really where these cuts are going to come from. We were able to absorb the cuts this year. I got to assume that it might be difficult to absorb the cuts in future years, but hey, we all live in a household that has to absorb cuts as costs increase. I mean, we've all had to do that in our households. We're going to have to do that too. And I got to tell you, a 7.9 million ask is a big ask. We were at 5.9 last time, although that was the lowest amount. And that levy was supposed to last for 3 years. This district, because of all the other cuts that we've seen, have been able to stretch that to 4. Now, I have confidence that this is going to be hard for us, but this is what we have to do. I would like to go the lower number. So, I mean, that's where I'm at. And see how it goes in the spring. You know, let our community decide.
I would lean toward the same. You know, we have to understand, you know, where we are, and things are tight. And I think that we need to be careful about reaching too high. This is a reach to begin with for many of our families. So I would definitely lean toward the lower end, the 7.9 mils.
But what happens, God forbid, it not pass in March? Then we'd have to do 2 things. One, we'd have to start making serious cuts in advance for next year.
Yes, we will.
And we'd have to come back in November with a higher ask.
Well, I think that might not necessarily
Or a shorter term.
be, we would have to make the ask again in November.
Yes,
Absolutely.
without a doubt.
It doesn't matter if it passes in March or if it passed in November, we don't get the money until January anyways.
Yeah.
Because that's when, you remember, the district.
Right, but we can't start
runs-
planning next year's budget without knowing what our revenue is. I mean,
It would
that's
be very
flying
difficult.
blind.
It would be very, very difficult.
Yeah.
So I think we have to go in March. I'm convinced we have to go in March because if we don't go in March, we know we have to go in November.
Yeah.
And
And we have to do a lot of planning with a
Without
lot of
information,
uncertainty.
right.
And I think that it is important, not as a, you can approach informing the public about really what is in jeopardy. I think it's important to inform the community what programs are in jeopardy. You have to do that, and it's not a threat. It's allowing people to be informed voters. And so I think that it's a fine line. We don't want people to feel that they're being sort of badgered into voting yes, but they do need to understand what's really at stake. I think that that's a very important piece, because otherwise folks are just not going to understand what's at stake, and if it didn't pass, then they would feel, I think that they might feel that we didn't do our best to inform them.
Well, I mean, it's real simple. I mean, I'm just going to pull, whether it's 7 or 8 million, we're going to have approximately, I'm just going to throw a number out there, plus or minus $1 million.
Not million.
I'm actually talking about million.
Oh, okay,
in
thank
the
you.
5-year
Okay,
forecast,
got
because
it.
that really what drives everything.
Got it, okay.
We're
good.
going to have to essentially cut $1 million out of our budget.
And that's
Okay,
a lot
again,
of
this is
program.
assuming nothing, no levy passage, nothing. Things are very prescribed in the union contract on who goes. The younger, less expensive teachers go, RIFs, so it's.
So then you need to cut more teachers.
So you need to cut more teachers proportionally. Touching benefits is a whole negotiation. We just can't arbitrarily just all of a sudden, cut our benefits by whatever percent. That's a negotiated item. How those are going to turn out, you don't know what that conversation is going to be like until you actually sit at the table with the unions that we have. And keep in mind, we're limited with Ohio Revised Code and how both sides are able to bargain. The net result is going to be higher class sizes. That is, what that's going to be, I can't tell you, but, if you look at the numbers, if our salary line is essentially, 6 million or 60-some million, if you take 7 million out of the equation, assume someone's going to come out of benefits, essentially, your class sizes are going to raise probably somewhere between 10 and 12%. That's just real ballparking, which is just probably not even.
Well, and it's also about programs. It's also about, the last time that we made cuts, one of the cuts that was made was middle school social studies and science, the honors middle school social studies and science courses, which we just returned as the middle schools opened. In some of the other program pieces that are just so important to the students, who are in them. So you're absolutely right. Cuts are brutal.
Yeah, and I'd like to see a higher mill in March, considering we have to go back to the negotiating table again, next year. And I would also like to see if maybe the Lay Finance Committee can look at, probably if we do a higher mill, if they can give what the homeowners, what they would have to pay out in property taxes. Say, if, for instance, if we do a 9.5 mil, what would the property, what would their taxes go up?
I would be really uncomfortable asking for a 9.5.
Right.
I think
Even
it
if it's
wouldn't
not a
pass.
9.5, I think a little higher than a 7.9.
I'm afraid if we go higher, people are going to think that we're asking for, based on the 5-year forecast, which is what this is all based on, let's hypothetically say we go 8, 9,
Yeah.
hypothetically, okay? Now, I think people are going to say, well, you're not going to have to make the cuts that you're talking about making. or you're going to spend that money in salaries and doing special programs. I mean, I think if we're going to raise that to 7.9, if we're going to raise it from 7.9, we need to know what we're spending that extra money on. The Lay Finance Committee, and I'm going to put words in your mouth, we're sort of looking at that amount as probably more of a contingency. Would that be the right word to say? So if we went beyond 7.9, it's more of a extra money, a rainy day fund, maybe. I mean, I don't know what to say, because if we can't make our cuts, or if the union negotiations didn't go the way they needed to go, I mean, I think those are the two major factors you had. I'm pointing to that slide, thinking I'm pointing at your presentation on the three
And not
reasons.
having, 10% of the budget available as cash at the end of the fiscal year. I mean, starting a fiscal year with no cushion makes it impossible to, again, back to the planning part, how are you going to encumber funds in advance of things that you know are coming if there's nothing in the bank?
So I've been on the Lay Finance Committee even before, at least a decade before I got on the school board, and there's always some money left. I mean, that's easy to say, but I've never seen a situation where it hasn't. So I may be eating those words 3 years from now, but it's always been a worry, and it's never seemed to materialize as something that was an actual threat.
I also think that we have an obligation to the cities that host us in this, we are a very expensive school district to live in. And the overwhelming majority of taxes that our residents pay come to us. And that is a burden for realtors. And it makes us less attractive to home buyers, to some home buyers. If you don't have students, school-age students, and you're looking to purchase, we need to be very careful about what we're doing to our host cities, just to make sure that we do our part to keep the cities affordable and attractive to new buyers, with students and school-age students and without. And I just think that as we continue to climb up the ladder of these millage rates, we are losing potential voters with every increase. And that's hard. That's hard on everybody.
I think we're honor bound to go with the smallest amount we possibly can go
I think so, too.
on. I worry about it not passing if we don't.
Yeah.
So I'm hearing Beverly's interested in a higher amount. I heard that you were sort of interested in a little higher amount.
I'm just looking at these numbers and going, if we end up with a zero balance at the end of fiscal '23, that means we're $25 million in the hole in fiscal '24.
We
I
will
just-
know that long in advance.
We will know that long in advance, and we will be making cuts with a very large knife all over the place as a result. I know. I don't like not having a cushion, that's all.
Yeah. Although I think,
Well, if it doesn't pass, we
Yeah.
have no cushion
You're right.
immediately.
Yes,
And
you're
that's my
absolutely right.
concern, is that
Yeah.
if we put something out that doesn't pass, and then we have to go back in November, and then it doesn't pass, then we're really in a world of hurt.
We are.
think
I see that.
we have to build a levy that's going to pass.
And there's something psychological about 7.9 versus 8-something.
Right, well, that's why gas prices are the way they are.
Exactly, that's why all pricing is the way it is. That's why everything is something, 98 or 99.
Right.
Can you put 8, that's a live spreadsheet, if you put 8 in the mill? And then,
So that puts us $6 million down.
so if you put 7.9,
Scott, if you see me doing something wrong.
Yeah, no, they're doing it right. It's, so in theory, as Ryan mentioned, 23 would be zero. It's rounding when you're dealing with this
Sure.
amount of money. but,
Yeah.
So you see
So, you know, So we're
136,000.
$6.5 million
in
down.
23.
I mean, it's just,
can
and
you do?
start the process all over again, which of course we
Correct.
have to do because welcome to Ohio.
Ohio.
Right, so,
Can you
Unless
do-
the Cup Patterson, legislation,
Right.
which, that's one of the positive things that
can we send them
is
lollipops,
uncertain.
please? I mean, something
But,
to make it work,
if-
yeah.
If they're able to come up with a school funding formula that actually would increase our state funding,
Let's
that
all hold
would
our
be
breath at once.
nice. I know. Yes.
Well, there's no appetite to get that passed right now.
No.
Yeah,
That's not-
unfortunately.
So-
And John
Right.
Patterson is term limited out.
Right.
Can we, can you put 8 back on there for a minute?
So,
I don't know, I'm of the mindset to go with the minimum, the 7.9. I mean, we're asking, I mean, it's a big ask no matter what we do. I think it needs to be the lowest. I know other boards prior to this board would lower the amount. They would always try to get a little lower amount than what the Lake Finance Committee would recommend. I trust the instincts on the committee. I trust Scott's instincts. I'm very comfortable with the 7.9. Well, no, I'm not comfortable with the 7.9. I awkwardly ask that of our taxpayers, but it's necessary. It's the least amount, and I think the least amount sends a strong message to our taxpayers that we are not trying to overreach. We're not trying to spend money that we don't have or we might not need. It's nice to have a contingency, but we have to deal with that, and we will have plenty enough time to deal with it if things go south, if we need to have more of a contingency. I'd like to make a recommendation. I'd love to make a resolution right now to call this, but I don't want to. I want to make sure that,
Well, we need to make a resolution this evening if we want to get on the ballot.
well, we
If-
have,
Assuming we want to get on the ballot in the spring,
yeah, no, I
because we have
understand.
to do a couple readings.
Yeah, I mean, I understand the reasons to keep it to the minimum possible.
It's also worth pointing out that we're on the timetable we are on because that same Ohio legislature, in all of their
Middle of
wisdom,
the night.
moved the spring election to St. Patrick's Day. So 6 weeks was cut off of our ability to plan and build a levy. So thank you again, Ohio legislature.
do you think there was any motivation why they did that? I would like to make a motion to
Jim,
go
did you pull-
forward.
So you pull up that resolution?
I'm looking at it right
Oh,
now.
okay, great. So just, the bullet part with whatever millage you want to propose.
Yeah, so I would like to make a motion, a resolution declaring it necessary for a levy for an additional 7.9 million tax for the purpose of current expenses and requesting the Cuyahoga County Fiscal Officer to certify the total current tax valuation of the school district and the dollar amount of revenue that would be generated by that additional levy, prudent to the sections in Ohio Revised Code of 5705.03 and 570521 of the revised code. So thank you, whatever lawyer put that together
Yes.
for us.
So that's,
Matt Sigoni, Squires.
that's
So-
7.9 mils?
So my motion is 7.9 mils.
I
Do I have a
second.
second? Mr. Gaynor, will you call the roll?
Mr. Hines,
Yes.
Ms. Wright,
Yes.
Ms. Serini,
Yes.
Mr. Posh.
Yes.
Ms. Lewis.
Yes.
And I'd just like to remind everybody that that is only the first reading. We have to do one more.
It's not on the ballot.
Correct,
So it's
yes.
not on the ballot yet. So if anyone in the community would like to reach out to us and give us your thoughts, please do so, because we have a few weeks before we will do a second reading.
Yeah,
So we-
so the county will take this resolution, certify the numbers, we'll be back to you in December, and that will be, and it must be a supermajority at that time, so.
So 4 out of 5
Yes.
have to vote yes. All right. Thank you, Lay Finance Committee.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's not easy work, and it's not fun work, but it's really important work.
And now I'd like to call up the City of University Heights to give us a property presentation, and I believe we have Patrick Grogan Myers, Mayor Michael Dillon Brennan, and Susan Drucker.
Very good.
You're on.
You're on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Michael Dillon Brennan. I'm the mayor of University Heights. University Heights is an urban suburb filled with educational and religious institutions, walkable neighborhoods, local eateries, shopping, and nearby amenities, offering residents the opportunity to build a life by design, find their forever homes, and plant roots. Before becoming mayor of the city of University Heights, I observed that while University Heights is a great place to live, for too long we had been leaving too many opportunities on the table. That after our initial developments in the 1940s, 50s, and 60s, we had come to take a passive view towards development. That development was something that happened to us rather than something that we envisioned, planned, and then actively sought and fulfilled. I went into City Hall with a vision of redevelopment. For years, we have been known as the city of beautiful homes, but we haven't built new homes in decades. Our population over time has declined, not because we have fewer homes, but often because the way we have lived in them and the way we live in them has changed. Our expectations for what we want in a home has changed. What if we were to build a development of homes with contemporary live, work, play sensibilities in a walkable neighborhood with modern conveniences and luxury finishes, and a Heights address, just 10 minutes away from the scientific, medical, and cultural hub of northeastern Ohio? We can do that at Cedar Taylor. And you, the school board, are in a unique position to help us bring this project together with all of the larger benefits to the community that this development will provide. To go over this proposal, I turn this over to our Housing and Community Development Director, Patrick Grogan Myers.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll send around copies of the presentation so you can
Nice to
follow
see you
along.
again, Patrick.
Great to see everyone tonight. So as the mayor discussed, when the mayor took office, coming up on 2 years ago, myself as Housing and Community Development Director and our Economic Development Director, Susan Drucker, were tasked with shepherding, identifying opportunities, and really championing development here in the city of University Heights. Again, taking a different perspective, but taking a different role in how the city of University Heights approaches development here in the city. And part of that change, part of that retooling as we approach development is looking at a project, looking at a potential development holistically. And what I mean by that is not only looking at financial metrics, of course those are important metrics, but making sure that we're working towards community development goals, making sure that when a project comes in, it's something that adds to and enhances the mosaic that we have here in University Heights. Making sure that, as our new tagline suggests, we continue to make University Heights so much more than home. So this opportunity that presented itself, as the mayor began to discuss, at the Cedar Taylor Business District, just north of Cedar, sandwiched between Taylor and Wynn Roads, there's approximately 1.2 acres of green lot that really has presented an opportunity, a unique opportunity, for us here in University Heights and for the Heights area. So the area we're referring to, again, is between Taylor and Wynn Roads. It's 7 parcels that approximately half are owned by the school board, me see if I can get this to work. So 4 parcels are owned by the school board. And those are parcels 72201, 003, 004, 005, which is a very thin parcel, and 006. So those school board parcels are highlighted in yellow, and the city-owned parcels are highlighted in green. So roughly speaking, of the 1.2 acres or so, half is owned by the school board, half is owned by the city of University Heights. All 7 of those parcels are currently zoned residential attached, which in zoning language translates to townhomes, seeks townhomes. Over the past year or so, myself and Susan Drucker have been approached by at least 3 developers with different residential ideas for the site. And in considering them, we're bringing to you the one that we find most intriguing, the one that we believe brings numerous benefits, and again, as I just previously touched on, the one that we believe hits on these financial metrics as well as these community development metrics that we're striving, that when we bring a development project forward, we're striving to hit those metrics, hit those goals. So the proposed development here, again, this is the same 7 lots that we were looking at here. The proposed development here, the conceptual plan proposes 30 townhome units on this 1.2 acre site or so. And in touching on some of these community development metrics, I just want to walk through a few portions of a few parts of the conceptual plan to highlight how, in our view, this hits on some of our goals here. So currently along the northern end, and the northern end of a few parcels do cross into Cleveland Heights, but the northern end of the parcels, there currently is a walkway that stretches from Taylor Road up to the sidewalks on Washington Boulevard. So that's extending from Taylor Road over here up to the existing walk that then connects into the sidewalk system running along Washington Boulevard. It's very important for the administration, for the city, and for the neighborhood that connection remains. That's a vital connection to connect the residents and the streets that are north of Cedar and running along Washington to the services in the Cedar-Taylor Business District, as well as the regional asset that is Kane Park. So under this conceptual plan, that walkway, that access for the neighborhood is maintained. Additionally, for University Heights at least, Cedar-Taylor is a unique business district. It hosts and boasts walkability, something that we don't get to see very often in the rest of our business districts. And one of the things that we wanted to make sure is that any development that went here added to that or helped keep that walkability. So for the townhomes, the 8 townhomes that run the length of Taylor Road, those townhomes are pushed closer to the street. Again, promoting that vibrancy, that walkability, that ease to close your door and walk down to Melt or walk down to one of the businesses in the Cedar-Taylor Business District. But it also helps support the positioning and the walkability of this site as proposed under the conceptual plan, promotes and continues the economic development efforts that the cities of University Heights and Cleveland Heights have worked together to further over the last almost 2 years or so. So namely working with the Cedar-Taylor Merchant Association on branding and streetscaping. Again, celebrating that sense of place that is so unique to the Cedar-Taylor Business District. Currently, we're working on a restriping plan, the 2 cities working with our regional coordinating agency, looking at Taylor Road and its striping. How do we make sure that we promote walkability, bikeability, our public transit riders and our motorists, making sure that everyone gets to enjoy the street and participate actively in that vibrancy of the business district. And additionally, this year, the city of University Heights purchased a commercial lot, just a few lots south of this proposed development site. And we are actively working on promoting redevelopment at that site as well. So again, this proposed development shown in the conceptual plan works to further all of these and many more goals that are working behind the scenes to help create such a unique space in the Cedar-Taylor Business District. And finally, one of the things that we found to be unique and consistent with our goals is this is something that is not fenced off. It's not gated off from the community. It's engaged as part of the community. Again, tying back to that walkability, making sure that we're not removing things from street life, but we're keeping them pressed into the street life. And we're also looking at something that really with the setbacks as we look on the southern end of the development, it's something that's recognized where for what is currently under the conceptual plan titled Townhome 23, that is set back a little bit further from the lot line because it recognizes that we've got residential houses on this end. When we look at the western side of the lot, they're set a little bit closer to the lot line because they're next to a commercial use. So being respectful of the community environment, recognizing that this is a residential use, but it's got to fit into the larger community that's already there and already well established. So taking this conceptual plan, a question that might be rolling through your minds is, okay, what are the mechanisms? How do we make this happen? And one of those things is the first step is consideration of the letter of intent that's before you tonight. Subject to your approval tonight, that would authorize the land to be transferred to the City of University Heights. And then the City of University Heights, in partnership with its Community Improvement Corporation, the University Heights City Beautiful Corporation, we would transfer those 7 parcels from city ownership to the City Beautiful Corporation. It is that City Beautiful Corporation that would negotiate a development agreement with the proposed developer, and through that development agreement, we would ensure that a residential use similar to the one shown in the conceptual plan is the one that's built. Meaning, we're not going to transfer the properties and you're now going to see a commercial strip center. So that development agreement, along with our zoning code, again, all 7 parcels are currently zoned for this type of project. The zoning code and the development agreement help ensure that what you're seeing and what's built are going to be very proximate to one another.
And Patrick, these are owner-occupied, not rental units, correct?
Correct. They'll be single-family units. So in townhomes, single-family units, each one will have its own lot, and they will share what's called a fire or a party wall. So they would be single-family lots or single-family homes, excuse me.
Thank you.
Yes. So then also, from here, you might be asking, what might these townhomes look like? So on the screen here are some of the graphics that can suggest what these townhomes might look like. So we're seeing more modern ways of living in terms of having an open floor plan from kitchen to living room to dining room, something that is not found very often here in University Heights, at least in the as-built home of the 1920s through 40s. No, not at all. And some of the facades that you'll see suggest different styles of housing. Again, as I stated previously, so this project, subject to your approval and all of the mechanisms working, would go through the city's normal approval process, which includes the Architectural Review Board's approval of what the final facade would look like. And they are concerned with how does the project look and how does it relate to the community that it would be going into. So while it would allow for a project to have its own unique flair, it would seek to find some sort of commonality with the area around it. So there's, different styles that the facades might take, and also the possibility for rooftop decks. And from the Heights vantage point, you can see downtown from a rooftop deck at that point. So these, again, present a unique style of housing that is not really available here in University Heights, let alone broadly speaking in the Heights area.
So we're talking about 3 or 4 stories tall for that rooftop deck to provide the right view.
So under the zoning code, it would allow for a maximum of 40 feet tall. So that typically runs about 3 floors.
Okay, thank you.
So then I hit a lot on the kind of community development aspects. How would this proposed project, has the conceptual plan kind of fit into the community it would become a part of? But I want to touch briefly on some of the financial metrics. So as we stated previously, we're really looking for something that is beneficial on numerous metrics, something that recognizes that there are multiple stakeholders in any development project. And as I stand before you tonight, you are one of our largest stakeholders here in the community as the school board and representing the school district. Based on the conceptual plan previously discussed, we would work with the developer and go to the county to request that the land that is parceled out. So each one of these townhomes is a separate parcel, which is how it is a single-family home. So we would go to the county to request a $30,000 lot valuation for these lots. Part of what that does, because this proposed project would be under our tax abatement program here in the city, setting a valuation of $30,000 per lot would also help generate property taxes for the school district. So these are conservative numbers, but what our estimates show is that annually, once the properties are subdivided, or once the property is subdivided, it would generate about $20,000, if not more. Again, these are conservative estimates because we are working with a conceptual plan. But our estimates are that about $20,000 in property taxes for the school district would be generated annually.
How do the public green spaces get accounted for? Because those aren't lots to be sold in the same way that
So the space surrounding
yeah.
the townhomes, the space surrounding the townhomes would be managed by a homeowners association, which then would also be taxable.
So your tax abatement, because of your CRA, is 15 years.
Correct.
So we would get roughly $20,000 a year for the next 15 years, and then after the 15 years, we would get the full value.
The full value of the improvement and the land. For the first 15 years, it would be for the land.
So I mean, we've all been privy to some of this information in executive session. We've had our lawyers look at it. I mean, I think it needs to be said that you're not coming here asking for any tax abatement. From us. So
Correct.
There's no tax abatement on the table
No.
that we're approving.
Correct.
You have the ability through Ohio Revised Code to do the things that you do, to do a 15-year tax abatement on new construction and anything that you're doing for betterment on a property, which is what you're taking advantage of. That's the law, that's fine, I'm not complaining about that. Your real issue here is you've got, hey, Cleveland Heights, University Heights School District, you have these parcels, they're basically in your real estate inventory, you're not using them, we think we can utilize them and not only generate this revenue beginning immediately, but also sort of light a fire in that neighborhood so further development can be done. One of the biggest problems we have is on the other side of the street in Cleveland Heights in those parcels that haven't been paying real estate tax. I think that's the largest. Scott, I'm putting you on the spot, or maybe you're not, but
Are you
that's
talking about the Tudor ones?
the Tudor buildings. I
Yeah.
think they're the largest ones that haven't been paying their taxes. And I think there's plans that Cleveland Heights has been having conversations with you. I think that's what came out in one of our meetings on their plans to try to revitalize that neighborhood, which I think we all want, which would then increase the property taxes district-wide for everybody.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
I mean, I think I'm just trying to.
Yes, absolutely. So yes, the matter before you is that the project, we're confident in the project, we're confident in its ability to deliver many of the metrics that we have laid out before you tonight. But the school board has the half of the land to help make this project possible. And this absolutely is a project that is something of a larger visioning for Cedar Taylor and for the Taylor Road corridor that both Cleveland Heights and University Heights are working on to improve the neighborhood, continue the vibrancy and just build off of that vibrancy that's already there.
So, I mean, the community is going to look at this and they're basically going to say that you guys you're just talking about putting a school levy on the ballot. Why don't you sell these properties so you don't have to put a school levy on the ballot? Well, I mean, I think realistically, we're limited with Ohio Revised Code and what we can do with these parcels to begin with. even if we didn't have those limitations, what would be the fair market value to those? And if we were to ask fair market value, would this development go through? And I think the advisement that we've gotten from our council and we've gotten from our partner cities is, without us transferring this property to you at a nominal amount, there would be no transaction.
That's correct.
And
Yes.
that's been validated by, legal counsel and all the other people that we've had that look at this.
And we can stop cutting the grass.
It's George, he already.
Yes, and
And we have to maintain the
that
way
is,
we want.
that is absolutely true for both cities. This represents an area that, for the city, for the school board, it represents a cost that we need to maintain these lots, cut these lots, and this is a way to.
And they're currently not generating any revenue
Correct.
at all.
They're just costing
They're
us.
costing us.
So the letter of intent that we have in front of you, and I believe it is in board docs?
It is.
Yes.
So is it the public part of board
It
docs?
is.
Good, so everybody can see it. So there is, it's a non-binding letter of intent, right?
Correct.
And part of our lawyer fees to look at this will be paid for by the city of University Heights, so we're really not losing any money having our lawyers look at this, which I think was a very nice move for the folks that have been working on this. So if the development does not proceed, we get the parcels back.
Yes,
Yes, there's a clawback. Correct.
yes, there is a clawback, and it is if the development is not completed within 4 years.
So what do we really have to lose by not doing this?
We got to keep cutting grass
That's pretty
and
much.
getting no money for it.
And we don't sort of help light the spark to do some betterment in that community. And I would imagine all those property owners that are around, even though you do have nice green space and stuff, I would suspect it's going to increase their property values.
Well, and seeing how we spent a good portion of the meeting earlier tonight talking about how we need to raise more money for the school district, this could help increase the value of property, and we would start getting at least some money off of these
Right,
lots.
and it does add to our real estate base after the 15 years. There we have new property taxes coming into the.
Yeah. And we've asked the question multiple times to staff, do we have an educational need for this property? I mean, we know we need a bus depot, but we know there's not enough space in these areas to do that.
Yeah.
I will tell you, I pass these, this property, I think just about every day, because my son goes to Heights High, and it's just on our route. And that is an area of both cities that really needs a spark. And it needs, I think, us to show that we have faith in it. And I think it's the sort of thing that just might be contagious. So I think that there is a real creative energy that might come, and everybody wins. I think this is an easy one in my mind.
Well, and I look at this and I want 30 young families moving in, or 30 young people moving in, that will fall in love with our community and stay here. And hopefully, even when they outgrow their townhome, I hope they will buy another lovely home in the area.
Larger,
and-
right.
Larger, and send their children to our school district. And frankly, I want to see a project get done, because while we're sitting around as communities waiting or fighting or not being able to get something done, projects like this are getting done in other communities. And I think that we need to be part of making this happen.
What would that,
I have a question for Patrick. Do you know if there are sewer lines running under those parcels? Has anybody surveyed that and checked the drawings?
Been buildings there.
There were buildings there in the past.
At
Oh,
one
yeah,
point, yes.
absolutely.
Okay, so there's stuff under there, we're just not seeing it.
Yeah, there was was it a temple, a synagogue? It goes pretty far back, but, yeah.
Okay, because we know there's a massive project going along Washington Boulevard, which is never going to be finished, as far as I can tell. So is there capacity to tie in? But that's not my problem, that's the developer's problem.
What would the average cost of the townhome be?
I believe they were looking at about $425,000 was the estimate.
So these are high-end luxury
Yeah.
townhomes.
You'll take two?
I want the big one in the corner. All right, well, do I have a motion to consider the letter of intent for the purchase of real estate or real property?
Sale of real
The
estate.
The letter, do I have a motion to consider the letter of intent for purchase and sale of real property?
So motioned.
Second.
Mr. Gaynor, will you call the roll?
Ms. Wright?
Yes.
Mr. Posh?
Yes.
Mr. Heinz?
Yes.
Ms. Serini?
Yes.
Ms. Lewis?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're
You're
welcome.
very welcome.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Mr. Mayor.
And now, on the agenda is the superintendent's report.
Oh, wonderful.
Ms. Kirby.
Thank you. So I'm going to talk about the work that we've been leading in the district, aligned to the strategic plan goals. As relates to Goal 1, this month, the Educational Services team, led by Mrs. Gould, has started the BLT Learning Walks. These are day-long processes where the Ed Services team walks the building in partnership with members of the BLT, aligned to the instructional goals that each of the schools are working on. Starts with a comprehensive data presentation by the school where they talk about their past performance and also the things that they're doing this year in order to improve performance, even providing, in some instances, sample assessments that the schools are giving to track academic performance of students, and also reporting on the results of the unit assessments, which is one thing we're really focused on this year, so we have a way to progress monitor how schools are performing against the academic standards. Coupled with that, this month I've started my one-on-one instructional visits with principals, again, to understand how they're leading their schools to meet the goals, the achievement goals of the district, and also to understand what kind of supports they need in order to meet those goals. Today we had a great day. It's our November 5th Professional Development Day. Day of Learning at Heights High, led by teachers, leaders, principals, some outside partners. We had over 70 presenters present strategies that teachers can take back to their classrooms. I learned a lot myself. I learned how to do the clicker. I learned how to incorporate acting into literacy. I learned about the work of our grading task force. I learned how to use the Illuminate Ed to make assessments to provide to students, teacher-made assessments. It was really a very, very rich day of learning. I was very impressed with the work that the Educational Services team did in organizing this, and it really speaks to the talent that we have within the district to move our outcomes. So really, really great day. We also had the Shark Tank. I saw Malia there as well.
That was fun.
So we had different people who were seeking funding for different projects from the High Schools Foundation to present. We also, during the month of October, had professional development that the curriculum team has led with both teachers and also high school liaisons happening this month. We'll continue to build on that work. And you also saw some examples of some of the students who engaged in the Damn Yankees. I feel bad saying the D Yankees musical.
It's okay, it's the name of the show.
So I know many of you all were at that. It was a great show, great experience. And I know already the team is planning on the next fall musical that's going to be happening. For Goal 2, our equity task force did get certified by Dr. Stacy Scott from Creative Leadership Solutions, I believe that's the name of the company. So they were engaged in a 3-day, very intensive training for the team where they not only got the certification, but started doing some level setting as relates to the strategic plan around equity and the direction that the team wants to take moving forward for this year. We have information about groundwater 2 training that I'll be sharing with the board. And I know that's something that we want to do in collaboration with the cities this year as well. We also have revived the Early Childhood Task Force, so the team is continuing to work and meet and collaborate, and are readying for a presentation to the board early in the year as it relates to preschool programming, from an instructional perspective, but also from a placement perspective as well. So we have a robust, very excited committee of folks who are really taking that work and running with it. As it relates to Goal 3, you all know we do have the new CHUH app that is out there for the public to install in their phones to use to get information about the district. We continue to work on it and refine it to make sure that it is something that is useful, valuable, savvy, and sophisticated. But I invite you all to take a look at that and provide feedback as we make adjustments to that. We also have posted our applications for the Advocacy Task Force and also the Lay Facilities Committee as well. So we're looking for community participation on those different bodies, one which will serve to assist the district in advocating for an Ohio assessment system and an ed choice system that doesn't punish schools. And so we really are trying to figure out how to advocate, do our own part in advocating for that. It's something that many districts around the state are now doing, especially given that now 2/3 of districts now have ed choice designated schools. We have over 1,200 schools in the state of Ohio, and 435 districts that now have ed choice designated schools. So this is a big advocacy issue that many of the superintendents across the state now are engaged in, and we're joining them with that. And then in terms of the Lay Facilities Committee, also continue to seek community participation in that committee as we make sure that we are using our permanent improvement funds strategically and wisely. As it relates to Goal 5, I'm not sure if you all knew, maybe you did, but we did receive an award for historic preservation from, here, I'll find it, on the remodeling of Roxborough and Monticello as well. So we got, thank you. This is a Community Improvement Award from the City of Cleveland Heights, and we received the Historic Preservation Award for rehabilitation of our historic middle schools. And so again, hats off to George and his team for this work. They really did work hard to maintain a lot of the original architecture and spirit of the schools and the work that they did. But not to be satisfied just with the work, George and I did do a walkthrough with union leadership to make sure that we were addressing all the concerns as it relates to those. That really is about the school move, really, and making sure that schools had what they needed as well. So we continue to make sure that those buildings, both of those buildings and the staff have what they need, and we're making continued adjustments. There's still a punch list of work that's being done, so you do have workers who are in and out a lot at the building, refining things. So that concludes my report for the month of October. It has been a busy month. It's gone very, very quickly. It's hard to believe that it is November. And I look forward to coming back and presenting the November report, where we will have a report on the equity audit for Monticello Middle School and Roxborough Middle School.
Good. So you have a report next month? for
Yes.
that?
So Liz, one of the things you mentioned was the building walkthroughs for your staff.
Yes.
When are you wanting board members to do? We usually do walkthroughs as well. They're usually about an hour, and we pick buildings. And I also want to talk with the group about this as well. So if you give us a time frame, and then we work with Rosalind to help schedule, your admin to help schedule the buildings. But my thoughts on this was this year, in addition to visiting classrooms, I'd like us to also go to a CTE program to get more visibility on our career and technical education. And I also would like your thoughts on, typically we go to the schools that we know, because either our children went there or they're in our neighborhoods. I would like to see us maybe go to schools this year that we don't traditionally go to. So I know in the past I've gone to Garrity and Boulevard and Monticello, because that's where my child has attended. And I think that maybe I should go to Canterbury or go to a school that I typically wouldn't go to. So I'd like your thoughts.
I like the idea of mixing it up. And I think that going to visit a CTE program is important for us as a board to really be able to see how that is different from a regular classroom and be able to talk about it knowledgeably. At Shark Tank today, I spent a lot of time telling teachers they needed to see the through line from what they're working on at the elementary or middle school level and follow it up to the high school level, either a specific CTE program or a high school class. Like, we have a high school class in forensic science, and there was a teacher working on a forensic science club at an elementary level. It's like, these people need to talk to each other, the kids need to know about each other and see where it all leads. And so CTE is part of that. The more we know about CTE, the better we can make those connections.
So Liz, I'll leave it up to you to let us know, when the time frame is for that, and then we'll schedule working through Roslyn to get scheduled for that.
Yeah, I'm thinking January.
That's typically when
but
we've done it.
Yeah, but I'm going to check back with the cabinet just to make sure it doesn't clash with anything else that's planned.
Okay, good. I think we've usually done it like January, February timeframe, so that would work well.
So one of the issues, though, is sort of advanced timing, because, many of us work and have other commitments. So sometimes these things have just sort of been sprung on us. I mean, we're always in the buildings anyways, but these are very, very formal presentations we get from the principals and certain staff members. So they're very valuable, and you don't want to miss them, but, whatever advance notice you can give us for the open time slots, the better.
So we can
Because
work
some
our
of us have
schedules.
to take time off work and stuff, which is great. It's all part of what we do. But I know in the past, we weren't given enough time on sometimes.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to move into the board presence report unless anybody has any other questions for Liz?
Nope.
No? Okay. So first of all, I just have to say, damn Yankees, wow.
Yeah.
What a great presentation. That was just phenomenal. So I hope everybody got to go see it. I want to report that this Friday and Saturday, Liz and I are going to the 1619 conference in downtown Cleveland. It is an equity diversity conference, so we're going to be spending the day there. It's a busy weekend because, as you know, then on Sunday, we are all going to Capitol Conference, which is the Ohio School Board Association's conference for us. Also, I want to remind everybody that we are changing the date for the work session. It's now going to be November 25th. I believe it was the 19th previously, but I'm out of town, Liz and Allison are out of town, and that is our next data presentation, so please get that on your calendar. Also, I know we're trying to schedule another joint meeting with the cities. That there's been, I don't have any dates yet, but we're trying to figure that out. So as soon as I know that, I will give it to you. I want to remind everyone that we got a note from Yvonne Wallace about Noble. She invited us for a Noble Read Aloud invitation. So I just want to remind everybody, if you get a chance to respond to that, I know I'm planning to do it. She gave us several options that we could choose from. I think it was like Fridays at a certain time, and I can forward that if you don't
There's
have that email anymore.
quite a few times. If you,
Yeah,
yeah.
Forward that?
Yeah, because I'm not seeing it.
I don't think I got it.
okay.
Very wide open too. You
It's
can
wide
read
open.
anything.
Yeah, so I would just, if you didn't get it, I'll forward it to you.
Would you please?
Might be rocking some Longfellow.
And then also, I got a note from Vanessa Fitzgerald from PTA Council, and I want to let everyone know there's going to be a PTA fundraiser on January 5th, 2020 at 7:30 PM, and it is a Tiger Nation Cavs takeover. So it's going to a Cavs game.
I got it.
And tickets are, there's a lower level court, those tickets are $47. There's a sideline ticket, that is $130, and there is a Loudville ticket, which is $13. So if anybody is interested in supporting the PTA Tiger Nation Cavs takeover, it will be the Cavs versus the Minnesota Timberwolves. So it sounds like a fun night, and would love to see a lot of families out. January 5th.
Yeah, that's a
And that's
Sunday.
the Sunday before school starts up, right?
Yeah.
I believe it is.
It is.
So that is all that I have to report. Oh, no, one other thing. This Thursday, so 2 days from now, I'm going to be making a presentation to the University Heights Citizens Group, Senior Citizens Group, at 2 o'clock at the University Heights Library.
Okay.
They asked me to come and speak.
Thank you for doing that.
So that is my president's report. Are there any board committee reports?
The Equity Task Force is meeting again tomorrow afternoon, and that's the first time we're gathering after our 3-day intensive. It took a while to decompress after that. I'm also going to the
Oh, are you going to
400
1619?
Yeah, the
Okay.
400 Years of Inequity,
Okay.
Friday, Saturday. And that was the only thing I think I had, because you mentioned the PTA Cavs night.
Then I will amend my statement that Malia, Liz, and I are going. Is there any unfinished business?
Yes. So there was a meeting yesterday or the day before with myself and Christy Cooper, our IT director, meeting with the Citizens Task Force in Cleveland Heights for broadband, municipal broadband initiative. They have received their RFPs back. They've negotiated with the city to work with the city in doing a study, which is the next step. Again, this is a way of bringing low-cost broadband to all of our community members in the city of Cleveland Heights. There was discussions about including University Heights, but at this time, the city of University Heights just sort of wants to see what happens with the folks from Cleveland Heights.
I get it.
This is pretty popular. Cities like Hudson have done it. It's just an inexpensive way of delivering broadband, again, to citizens. And we have to remember this directly benefits our kids. Every single textbook we deliver is delivered online. So whatever we can do to promote that really helps our kids. I mean, it's sort of interesting where, I see kids, walking home from school, and they sit on steps because they know they're getting free, sit on a residential step because they know they can, someone hasn't locked down their router, and they're getting broadband, right on their phone or whatever device they have. So, whatever we can do to support this is good. And we'll have more updates they'll have more updates for us.
This is maybe something, I know we've talked about going and giving an update to South Euclid as well. Maybe this is something we would want to include in
Yeah,
that when we
absolutely.
meet with South Euclid
That's a great
Council.
idea.
Is there any other unfinished business?
No, I'd just like to say, Damn Yankees was just fantastic, and the majority of our AFS students participated in the
Oh,
in the
that's excellent.
production, and they're just having a wonderful experience.
That's good.
That's great to hear.
And I would like to report that with 13% of the vote in, James Posh and Beverly Wright have received votes. So therefore, I think we can say congratulations to you.
So, how many? One?
More than one.
So I guess
Thank you,
that.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank
So
you
was
for
that the
voting
new
for
business,
us.
Dan? Was that the new business there?
That was new business. And
Or
the other thing
correspondence and announcements, there you
is
go.
just, the Early Childhood Task Force is doing, as Liz mentioned, sort of reconstituted under, with the assistance of Lisa,
Fahey?
making great progress. And it's a restart that was necessary and is really doing good work.
Great. So if there are no other correspondence and announcements, then I think we can adjourn. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Yes. I
Do I?
motion we adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second,
Mr. Gaynor, will you call the roll?
That's right.
yes.
Mr. Posh.
Yes.
Mr. Hines.
Yes.
Ms. Serini.
Yes.
Ms. Lewis.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for hanging with us.
Yes.
We are adjourned.